The sun was setting over Jerusalem. Golden rays brushed the white stones of the temple, and the air filled with the gentle hum of evening prayers. Among the people climbing the temple steps were two men, one dressed in fine robes, the other in worn, dusty clothes. The first man stood tall and confident. His robe was spotless, his sandals new, and his head held high. He was a Pharisee, a man respected for knowing the law, teaching others, and keeping all the religious rules. As he walked, people stepped aside, whispering words of honor. He liked that. It made him feel important, righteous, even close to God. The second man walked slowly behind him, his head bowed. He was a tax collector, a man everyone despised. His job was to collect money from his own people for the Romans, and often, tax collectors took more than they should. Many saw him as a traitor, a sinner, unworthy of stepping into God's house. Shame weighed heavy on his shoulders, and he kept his eyes on the ground. When they reached the temple court, the Pharisee stood apart, far from the crowd. He lifted his eyes to heaven and began to pray loudly so that others could hear. "God," he said proudly, "I thank you that I am not like other people, thieves, liars, or sinners. I'm not even like that tax collector over there. I fast twice a week. I give 1/10 of everything I earn. I am righteous before you." His words echoed in the temple, full of pride and self-praise. He believed his goodness made him closer to God. Meanwhile, the tax collector stood at a distance, too ashamed to come near. He could not even lift his eyes toward heaven. His heart was heavy with guilt, and his hands trembled. Slowly, he beat his chest and whispered, "God, have mercy on me, a sinner." Tears filled his eyes. He didn't try to prove himself or list his good deeds. He simply begged for mercy, believing that only God could forgive him. The Pharisee glanced over at the tax collector and smirked. "Look at him," he thought, "too sinful to even pray properly. Thank God I am not like him." But deep inside, his heart was empty. Though his lips moved in prayer, there was no warmth in his words. His heart was filled with pride, not love. He prayed to impress others, not to speak with God. The tax collector, however, stood in silence long after his whisper faded. He remembered all the wrong he had done, the families he had cheated, the people who had cursed him, the loneliness that followed him everywhere. Every memory stung like a wound. He pressed his hand against his chest. "Lord, I don't deserve your mercy," he murmured, "but please, forgive me." And in that moment, something changed within him. A peace he had never known began to rise in his heart. He felt seen, not for his failures, but for his honesty. He felt loved, not because of what he had done, but because he was willing to admit he was wrong. The Pharisee, still praying proudly, looked around, expecting to feel God's approval. But his heart remained cold, untouched by grace. He thought he was righteous, yet he did not realize how far he had drifted from true humility. When the prayers ended, both men turned to leave. The Pharisee walked out with his head high, confident in his own goodness. The tax collector left with his head bowed, but his heart was light. He had come burdened by sin, and now, he walked away forgiven. As the temple grew quiet and the night fell, the story of these two men lingered in the hearts of those who saw them. Some wondered, who did God hear that evening, the proud man or the broken man? The answer came like a whisper of truth, the humble one. For God saw not the robe or the title, not the fasting or the offerings. He saw the heart. The Pharisee's prayer was filled with pride, but the tax collector's prayer was filled with repentance. And it was the tax collector who went home right with God that day, forgiven, accepted, and made new. The Pharisee believed his goodness made him better than others, but God's kingdom does not work that way. The proud man had exalted himself, but he left empty. The humble man had lowered himself before God, and he left lifted up. That day, heaven smiled not on the man who bragged about his righteousness, but on the one who bowed in repentance. True prayer does not come from proud lips but from a humble heart. Sometimes, we may look at others and think we are better, but God doesn't look at what we show, He looks at who we are inside. The proud man prayed about himself, the humble man prayed for mercy. And mercy is what opened heaven's door. So, the next time you pray, remember, God listens most closely to the heart that is honest, broken, and willing to change. Moral lessons. The story of the Pharisee and the tax collector teaches us a powerful truth about humility and the heart that truly pleases God. It reminds us that God is not impressed by outward appearances, fancy words, or proud attitudes. What matters most to him is the sincerity within us. The Pharisee stood tall, proud of his good deeds, but his heart was filled with pride. The tax collector, on the other hand, came broken and honest. He knew he had failed, yet he asked for mercy with a humble heart. This story shows that it's not about how perfect we appear, but how honest we are before God. When we admit our mistakes and seek His forgiveness, we open the door to true change and peace. Sometimes, in life, we might be tempted to compare ourselves to others or think we are better because of what we do. But God looks deeper. He sees our hearts. He values humility over pride, sincerity over show, and repentance over reputation. So, let this story be a gentle reminder. It's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to fall and ask for mercy. What matters is that we stay humble, keep our hearts pure, and treat others with compassion. Because in God's eyes, those who humble themselves will always be lifted up. If this story touched your heart, remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring Bible stories that bring faith, hope, and wisdom to everyday life.